Welcome to Doing Business with Warren Galloway. I'm your host, Warren Galloway. According to recent reports, the U.S. tech industry market is worth around $1.6 trillion. From apps to social media consulting and IT equipment services, the tech industry is highly profitable. On today's show, we'll talk with Dr. Don Batts, a capital strategist at TechTown Detroit, about the aspects of funding for a tech-based and tech-enabled business. Welcome to the show, Don. I'm so excited to have you as a guest. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me. You know, I always love having these conversations with you, and now we have an opportunity to let others listen into our quite frequent conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. But here's the thing: people know about me, but they don't know who is Dr. Don Batts. Why don't you tell our guests who you are?
Yeah, so my name is Dawn, and I am currently the capital strategist at TechTown for tech-based programs. So I get the opportunity and the pleasure of spending most of my time trying to solve for the problem of resource gap for tech companies, and specifically looking for money or things that can replace money for our tech-based businesses.
Got it. Tell us a little bit about what are the traditional ways that a tech or tech-enabled business would get funding? How would they fund their business?
Yeah. So some of it is similar to what you may see in the retail, but then there is, there are some differences. So that most people start bootstrapping. You know, they do it however way they
Yes.
can. You know, they're working a day job or what I call two-arm living. You know, they're working a day job, and at night they try to do this, this business, very similar to what we find on the retail side. Some of them get family and friends. You know,
Right.
they're people who believe in what they're doing, and they're willing to, contribute. Now, I always tell people to be careful because you still got to go to family functions, and so you want to make sure if you do that, it is still a formal agreement. It is still something that that we have to take seriously because we do want to make sure we're bringing value. After that, it starts changing a little bit. In the for tech businesses, equity is the name of the game. So it's more equity play. Even when you start with a debt instrument, it's a convertible note. And the convertible part is intended to, I know we're loaning you this money now, we're lending this money to you right now, with the intent at some point, and they are triggered, it will
Right.
convert to equity. So equity is more of the route that you want to go, or tech businesses tend to go. And from that, it can be different type of funders. It can be anywhere from angel investors, which still will be an equity play, all the way through a venture capital.
So, but when we talk about angel investors, a lot of people look at, was it Shark Tank?
Right.
What is that like for a business owner who has to go before people with net worth who want to invest in a tech-based business? What is that experience like? Is it like what we see on Friday nights on Shark Tank, or is it something completely different?
I think there's some common factors in that you're presenting, and you're trying to make a case of what's so unique about your business. There's some negotiations, typically not in real time, but there's a lot of negotiation around what is it worth? What are we getting? And do we believe that this founder can make it grow? It is all about growth. So I always say, typically for tech businesses, you're getting funding to help you scale to exit. The intent is exit because typically investors expect at least 10 times the money that they're putting in, right? So that is a little different than when you look at some retail businesses where not only is it not an equity play, typically it's more of a debt play, but it's also to expand. Your goal is to expand. I want more of these things if I'm going to grow, not to get out of them. So from that perspective, you got to figure out that growth model, and they're looking at how much money am I going to get out of this? So hopefully most people are not experiencing exactly what we see on Shark Tank, but they do have to be prepared to answer tough questions.
Got it. Let's talk about another funding mechanism is crowdfunding. Is that a tool that's traditionally used for tech-based businesses?
It is gaining more popularity. So crowdfunding is relatively new, and when you look at the different type of funding, and it was intended specifically to give more options. So back to your question around angel investing, one, I got to know where the angels are. How do I find an angel? They often don't have, the halo around their head saying, here, I'm an angel. There are angel groups, that you can find. Michigan particularly has a Michigan Angel community. You can go to their website and you can see the angel groups. So that gives you some insight. But sometimes you don't know, where an angel is, or you don't know who is an angel. So that part, in itself can be difficult for the average person to find an angel or, convince an angel to fund their business. Crowdfunding was intended not only from that perspective, but also those who may not meet the criteria of an angel. There are some definitions around, who can be an angel or what an angel is, and it's around your income. $200,000 for a single person, $300,000 for a married couple, or your net worth, which has to be $1 million, not including your primary residence. So when you look at from that perspective, there are a lot of people who may want to invest but don't meet that criteria. So crowdfunding was a way to say, hey, there are a number of people who want to invest. So let's bring in the crowd, if you will. You have to bring in a crowd. They do not have to be accredited investors like an angel, and they can invest smaller amounts to help a person, reach their goals and grow their company. And it has to be on a crowdfunding platform because there's still regulations. So It has to be on a crowdfunding platform, but it does allow a founder to get smaller amounts to help them grow their company.
So you recently were part of some similar, I wouldn't say a crowdfunding effort, or unless you called it something else, with Tech Town Detroit. You had a funding initiative to kind of help African-American businesses. Tell us how that worked and what was the end result?
That is such an exciting project that I was so happy to be supported at Tech Town. And it was the Tech Startup Fund. The intent of that project was to be the family and friends round for the African-American businesses, tech businesses in our community. And oftentimes, tech businesses, and African-American businesses may have more difficulty finding resources for their business, particularly when you start looking at angels. Again, where are they? Up until recently and even now, African-American not just founders, but just as a community, oftentimes we may not have those resources or have someone in our family that have an extra $20,000, $50,000, to give us, to help us grow our business. So our intent was to become the family and friends, if you will, for African Americans in the Detroit area, specifically for those who may be alum of the tech program at Tech Town. And our intent is to help them with that family and friends so they can get to the next milestone. Because in the funding cycle for tech businesses, your traction is critical. It is very difficult if you don't have a MVP or a minimum viable product. It's very difficult for you to get funding for the next level because your funder is thinking, how do I know this works? Or do people really want this? So we intend to help companies get to that next milestone, ideally an MVP or something like that. So then they can be on the journey of raising funds.
Got it. Let's talk about another, what I would consider a non-traditional funding mechanism for tech and tech-enabled businesses. Both you and I have worked very closely on this, is microlending. So let's talk about the impact of your clients being able to tap into a funding tool that traditionally was not available to them. How do you feel about that, and where do you think that's going to take your business owners to the next level?
Yeah, that's another exciting part of what I'm doing now. So my sole focus is bringing resources closer to our entrepreneurs and expanding the type of resources that they have, and even pushing the envelope of non-traditional resources. And that's where you so graciously shared all of your knowledge and some of your contacts to help us bring microlending as another option. I am excited to be able to start sharing that with some of our entrepreneurs. So if you don't have a family and friends, if we don't have other funding, cash, then this gives us yet another opportunity for tech businesses to get funding for that family and friends round, up to the $50,000, at least for the initial. That opens up another set of opportunity for them to get to the MVP. When you're looking at something like coding, it can cost you $50,000 to get coding, completed 50 to 75,000. So this yet brings yet another resource. The thing I love about it mostly is like, okay, why would someone go to a bank? You know this better than I. Oftentimes, banks traditionally they want to see everything, and you got to put everything up, collateral. You got to put something up just in case. Tech businesses are highly risky. All businesses are risky, but people often think tech businesses are even more risky because you often don't have a refrigerator or building, or I mean, you may have a building, but you don't sometimes have those physical assets that are often tied to retail businesses. So oftentimes, it's hard to get, I guess it's more difficult to get loans from banks. So this provides some of the benefits of a banking type institution without some of the hurdles that typically come, with that relationship.
So how was it that a microlender was able to fit tech and tech-enabled businesses into the underwriting criteria? Do they look solely at the revenue that's going to be generated by the business owner? Do they look at the global cash flow? What is it that was the trigger to say, you know what, we can do this type of lending with this market?
That's an excellent question, and one why I appreciate you and Deborah even more so, because you have to go beyond some of the traditional list of things you have to do. So all of those are still important. For some tech businesses, you're not generating revenue. You don't have an MVP again to even let people push the button and say, I think I want it, even after doing all of your custom discovery, then you would never get to that revenue growth, right? To even be considered. So they're looking at, revenue is considered, but if you don't have revenue, they're looking at what are your means of paying back. So if you have a full-time job or a job where the founders have a job, that becomes one of the means to pay back. Like you said, your global cash flow will include both your personal as well as your business. This case, they will lean more on, the personal side to say you have the capability, to pay it back. So all of those factors may come in. You might eventually have a customer contract, that you can show at some point as you go along. But we're also looking at the character of, of the individual, meaning, how they're going about their business. Do they have the business plan? Are they timely in their payments? I think what's going to be extremely important is the hands-on support, so that there's no substitution for really knowing the entrepreneurs and being able to pick up the phone and call them, or them be able to pick up the phone and call you when they have questions or when they run into problems. So they're not ducking to say, okay, I got to avoid this person. It's more of a relationship of calling to say, hey, you know what? I'm having trouble. I may not be able to pay this month or this week, although hopefully all of them will, but I just need, 2 days, or some grace, or at least a relationship to have that conversation, I think will be important, or someone who's watching over them to make sure that they're able to navigate some of the challenges that come to entrepreneurship.
What I really love about the fact that now this market can tap into microlending, at some point in time, they have to have some type of financial institution relationship. And then going there with a track record of paying on ambient, it is a microloan, a small loan, but just to have a payment history, because when they get in growth mode, they could potentially pursue higher levels of capital.
Yep, exactly. And it does. And banking relationships, quite honestly, is something that we take for granted. We assume that everyone has a banking relationship, or everyone can get one, or everyone even know how to get a banking relationship, and that is not true. So this puts them on a path. For those who may not have had that opportunity, this puts them on a path in a safe space, if you will, that will help them with those relationships.
Well, that's awesome. Any final comments that you want to say to our audience about tech and tech-enabled businesses and how they can access capital?
Yeah, there's a lot of resources in the ecosystem. Understanding those resources and when they're relevant to your business is critical. So a lot of times, people, angel investing sounds great, venture capital sounds great. but they are requirements. So the more you learn and educate and become knowledgeable about different resources and when it's good to insert those into your business, the better it is. So places like TechTown, you know, all the work that you do, we're here to help entrepreneurs navigate. That's what we do. You know, that's what our sole job is. So I think it's just important for people not to be afraid to reach out, or just know they don't know. Some have never done this before, so it's okay. It's okay to ask. It's okay to ask for help. And then there's a lot of work involved. You know, it requires a lot of work. And entrepreneurs that are already working very difficult. This is like working a lot. This is another thing, but it's an important thing for them to understand.
That's awesome. Thank you, Don. I really appreciate you coming on the show and giving us some insightful information about how to fund tech and tech-enabled businesses. Hopefully you can come back and we can talk about some other facets of the industry, because I know you're a very knowledgeable person. I know you personally, and thank you again for being on the show.
No, it is my pleasure. I'm looking forward to continue the conversation.
Great. Take care now.
Thank you.